When I reconnected with Ron Payne, he urged me to recall and submit my recollections of our first meeting. He wanted me to submit the story to Brenda Wise's WordPress page. This was our adventure. 007 in New York. By Alan Hickerson. October 24, 1982. I gave an appreciating look at the Walther PPK. It appeared tiny, there on the solid brass belt buckle. I looped the PPK buckle carefully through my belt loop, snugging the brass nail into the proper hole. I quickly checked my wallet and secured my budgeted $200 for the New York trip, a journey leading to James Bond 007. The chances of someone mugging me were slight, I convinced myself that day. After all, I was 250 pounds of powerful computer nerd, dressed to kill, in my Wrangler jeans and taupe safari shirt with epaulets, just like the one worn in Octopussy, by the incomparable Roger Moore, himself. In my pocket I secreted the special silver Ronson lighter, always better still, until they go wrong. I checked the keys to my gold interior Mercury Fairmont, checked my round-trip plane ticket, its destination New York City stamped on the side, and found my boarding pass. Everything was in place, thanks to the auspices of a gorgeous brunette I met along the way, and befriended at a local travel agency. I reviewed the contents of my attaché case for any missing articles. All there, I thought, inspecting the Moonraker dolls, the Ruger 22 replicas beside them, and the various 8x10 black and white glossies of famous James Bond 007 stars and co-stars. I examined my photo album of my dioramas and 007 plastic models. Everything, safe and snug, I thought, securing the duplicate copies of Starlog magazine on top. And then, of course, there was my beloved Swiss Army knife, my weapon of choice. I mustn't forget that. With all these things in place, I was soon ready to go. My conversation with my mother the night before had gone smoothly enough, but not without some guilt on my part. Confirmed a diabetic in 1968, she was not in good health. She had been recently hospitalized for testing, and was due to be examined again while I was away. The thought of leaving her, even for so short a time, haunted me, but she supported me in all I wished to do and urged me to make this important trip. I'd already spent the plane fare, and she knew I couldn't get the money back. The Timex on my left wrist beeped, 5 a.m. It was time for me to hit the road. It was a good 70 miles into Columbus, Ohio, and I planned a quick stop at Shoney's, and then there would be a full hour inside the concourse. There would be plenty of time to meet the 9:30 departure time for the Big Apple and James Bond. I kicked the Fairmont into drive and speeded south. At the airport ticket counter, I watched my checked attaché case disappear under the plastic folds, as it headed for my plane. The ticket supervisor approached my baggage checker and quietly whispered. The tiny blonde then smiled sweetly at me, and said, "Do you have any weapons, Mr. Hickerson?" Naturally, I produced the beloved Swiss Army knife. "What's that on your belt?" she said, suddenly looking very concerned. "That looks like a gun. You cannot carry a pistol on the plane with you." After several minutes passed and much complaining that my attaché case had already been checked and was on the plane, and more importantly, that I had no more baggage, she dug into a nearby trash can and found a cardboard box, which she shoved at me, while instructing me which items to place inside it. The Swiss Army knife went in first, and then the beloved belt buckle with the Walther PPK. It cost me $12 to check it as baggage, or they would not make the flight into New York. Suddenly, I realized my budget for convention materials was shrinking with every passing second, and I hadn't even gotten off the tarmac in Ohio yet. I was eager to get on with it, and get that plane on its way to Manhattan, where I hoped, at least, I could make good trades in the fascinating world of 007. New York arrival, the flight into LaGuardia did not take that long. Soon, I was hailing a taxi cab directly from the airport, and headed across the bridge, as the early morning sun reflected off the Twin Towers. The driver soon took the exit, carrying us quickly onto the FDR, the same stretch of roadway used a decade earlier by the James Bond producers in the making of Roger Moore's first big Bond outing, Live and Let Die. I searched and looked for pimp mobiles along the route, just as in the movie, but found only taxi cabs and semi-trucks traveling bumper to bumper, as the NYPD was setting up for the marathon run that was to take place that afternoon. I reviewed carefully the advertisement for the 007 in New York convention, which listed Kevin McClory, producer of Thunderball, Maurice Binder, the opening credits designer on all the official James Bond films, and the beautiful Martine Beswick, as their special guests. I was delighted and excited. I had just watched the Laserdisc of Thunderball the week before, and I knew the important contributions each of these people had made to this spectacular Sean Connery Bond film. I had 2 black and white glossies, just dying for their signatures. McClory was just finishing updating the script for Warhead. I am not sure if it was in pre-production or not. When the taxi pulled roughly into the front of the Dorlin, the fare was $22, and the little Arab who drove me possessed the nerve to demand a hefty tip. Besides, I found his attitude most agitating, I can tell you. Already, perhaps, 20 people stood outside the hotel in the October cold, happily awaiting the big event inside the lobby. There was already between 100 to 150 more waiting to get registered. There was a great sense of excitement and anticipation in the air. Then the axe struck. As my group walked eagerly toward a large lobby placard, we were all shocked at the blood-red slash across the convention poster board, emblazoned with, "Cancelled." What? I thought, feeling a horrible sense of despair move its way up through my body. No, Martine. The shock of what was happening was raising its ugly head. Disbelief and a horrible sense of despair moved collectively over everyone. Something is very wrong with the world, right now, I thought, attempting to keep my temper in check. Why hadn't anyone alerted us? Given us the news? It was only at that moment that the desk clerk announced that the James Bond 007 convention promoters had cancelled everything on Friday, last Friday, 3 days before. There would be no Bond 007 convention in New York today. Some 60 local New Yorkers just turned and stormed out of the Doral immediately, going on with the rest of their day. To me, this was a strange curiosity, as I figured they were accustomed to such shoddy treatment, and accepted it as part of their everyday routine. But the rest of us had traveled long distances, and at no little expense, inconvenience, and trouble to ourselves and others. The remaining crowd stood near the stage, where the big Bond event was to take place, the same stage where Kevin McClory, Maurice Binder, and Martine Beswick would have stood that day, if everything had not been thrown totally into chaos. We all felt a sense of doom and gloom from what had happened. We all felt betrayed by the actions of the Bond promoters, the Dorlin, and perhaps even the James Bond producers themselves, as it was later learned that the James Bond 007 in New York convention had been stopped by a legal injunction from producer Albert R. Broccoli and United Artists. Those of us who had come so far, and anticipated so much, were ready to riot. Everyone felt somehow victimized. It was a real slap in the face, and we couldn't even get refunds, and we looked helplessly at each other and wondered, what do we do next? I knew my plane was not leaving until 7:30 that evening. Already, I had forked out more than $150, just to be standing there, just like everyone else, with egg on my face. A girl ran past me, crying hysterically. Another man wanted to lynch the producer and the manager of the Dorlin. He was so upset, hurt, and angry, and rightfully so. I understood just how each of these hard-working people felt. I was one of them. 3 or 4 dealers, who arrived that morning, began hawking their collections, anyway. They were not going to be slapped down to the ground. It was Ron Payne, who shouted that we would hold our own 007 in New York convention. The People's James Bond 007 in New York convention. Hey, there's an idea. I thought. I reasoned that I would only see Martine Beswick for a few seconds, at most, as I fought to get her autograph. The rest of my time would be spent with these same people, anyway, so why shouldn't I enjoy myself, and go about networking, making friends, buying, trading and selling, and attempting to better the collection I already owned. That was why I was here in New York. At this time, October 1982, I owned and enjoyed the largest espionage collection in North Central Ohio, based upon the professional contacts' opinions I had met in those years, just prior to this event. At 11 a.m., the security chief at the Doral arrived abruptly and told us forcefully to get out. Indeed, giving them the benefit of the doubt, the Doral had probably been hurt by the cancelled convention, but that didn't mean that the management had to be mean and rude to us. Their attitude, it seemed to all of us, was we aren't letting this rabble come in off the street and use our lobby for something that does not benefit us financially. That's my take on the Doral that morning. But, the Doral did benefit financially, just the same. Ron Payne and his wife, Anne, were booked into a suite there, and they had come in the day before, and were treated with no more respect than the rest of us, where the James Bond 007 convention was concerned. Several local New Yorkers knew that there were several local fast food places in the area around the Waldorf Astoria and Doral Inn, and so we all marched toward the Burger King, the McDonald's, and the Wendy's to hold our convention. Ron Payne went to all three places and held court about his favorite topic, 007. Ron Payne led the first group to the local Burger King, just blocks from the Waldorf, where Frank Sinatra was singing that weekend. Already, the marathon runners were running past us, as we all chugged along in single file behind our leader. It was almost lunchtime. The Burger King manager requested that all of us purchase food in order to use their tables. The mezzanine at this Burger King, like the mezzanines at Wendy's and McDonald's, held about 50 people, all terribly excited that they were getting a second chance to hold their James Bond 007 convention, when no one else cared. After complaining about all the indignities and bad treatment we had received, regarding the cancelled Bond convention, things suddenly picked right up and we got down to serious trading and networking. At 12:30 p.m., the Burger King manager wanted us to buy more food, or move on. This restaurant earned a fortune that day, and the Burger King management in New York could not have been nicer. Later, when all was said and done and many of the others who had flown and had to catch their flights, Ron Payne invited everyone remaining, who wanted to come, to his suite at the Doral. So, from 1 until 4 p.m., there was an open house James Bond 007 convention, right in Ron Payne's suite in New York. That was the real 007 in New York, for all of us. Everyone exchanged telephone numbers and addresses. I even bought Ron's action-adventure novel, Shadows in the Sunday. We all did some trading. That day alone, Ron Payne gave away 600 copies of his James Bond, Secret Agent magazine for free. It was his contribution to all of us enjoying a good time. Ron, like the rest of us, had arrived in New York to earn some money on his investment. He published the magazine himself, and rather than lug all those magazines back to Virginia aboard the train, he gave them to us. The last I heard, a single mint copy of James Bond, Secret Agent magazine, published in 1982 by Ron Payne, was selling for $100 a crack at swap meets in California. Knowing that time was fleeting, and not wanting to leave New York so soon, I packed my Walter PPK belt, checked my attaché case, and grabbed the first taxi cab back to LaGuardia Airport that I could find. I ate a quick supper at the Air Terminal restaurant, which consisted of a special New York hot dog and New York onion rings. Soon, the return flight arrived, and I left New York City, with all of the weekend's impressions forever in my mind. My jet flight touched down into Columbus, Ohio, just before sunset. I was back home in my trusty Mercury Fairmont by 10 p.m., and all in one piece. The next day, Monday, my mom asked me about the trip and the exciting events of the prior Sunday in New York. Unfortunately, by Tuesday, all of the disappointing, bizarre, exciting, exhilarating events of 007 New York would fade into the recent past, as if being swept away in an avalanche. By that following Tuesday, my mom was being swept into surgery that would remove her kidney and 11 feet of colon. Somehow, my parents managed to successfully navigate a divorce during this same period, which didn't make things any easier on anyone. My mom suffered a lot: a colostomy bag, collapsed lung, kidney failure, numerous infections, and of course, the divorce. But, through it all, I shall never forget her courage or her encouragement. She wanted me to attend that James Bond 007 in New York convention that was cancelled, and then rose again in the fast food restaurants and later in one man's hotel suite. As for my father, he went through a great deal, too, quickly suffering a severe heart attack, then a stroke, deepening depression, the rigors of aggressive physical therapy, and then continued ongoing disability. For the next 17 years, I helped my father, as best I knew, and he willingly accepted my help. He had always longed to live in Las Vegas, the city where James Bond 007 takes on the Spang brothers in Ian Fleming's novel, Diamonds Are Forever. Blofeld would replace the Spangs in the movie. In 2005, I ran across Ron Payne's name in a forum on 00-7. The website was www.spywise.net, and I wrote Ron an email, and renewed our acquaintance. I can no longer remember all the names of the other convention attendees, though the name Ken Siegel, a native New Yorker, has been recently bandied about, and Ron confirms that Ken Siegel, who had written a question and answer manuscript on James Bond, did assist him in leading the others to Burger King. Mr. Siegel even later visited with Ron Payne at his former home near Urbana, Virginia, before Mr. Siegel moved to Levittown, New York. As for all the details of the People's James Bond 007 in New York convention, I have little to say, except what I have written here. Ron is the one who reminded me of the date and place. Mostly, I just remembered Ron and his book. When I submitted my story to Brenda Wise, I soon got a surprise email from Ron. Dear Alan, your article about 007 in New York, 1982, has been getting continued praise everywhere, but I was supremely gratified to know how much my friend George Lazenby enjoyed reading it. To me, that's special. Thanks for submitting it, and Brenda and I both hope you will submit more features to her website in the future. Even, perhaps, some Bond fan fiction, when you can. Cheers to you, Ron.
His dreams and a weathered stare. Ohio whispers in the dust-filled air. A suitcase full of trading schemes. New York calling with electric beams. Functioning plans were a golden tale, till the winds of fate made them derail. But no, it's canceled, the city sighed. The Doral Inn waits where hope once cried. Buzz like a spy's disguise. Alan saw the mission in Ron's tired eyes. Cobblestones echoed their restless boots. Skyscrapers hummed in their steel pursuits. They sat in the lobby, hearts heavy and bare, spy dreamers lost in the city square. Cobblestones echoed their restless boots. Skyscrapers hummed in their steel pursuits. Mob the McDonald's, but the fire's the same. winds echoed their restless boots. Skyscrapers hummed in their steel pursuits. The celebrity dreams might wait for a while, but Bond fans gather and they still smile. Cobblestone